in a way, I think we are on the planet to uh, and to complete stuff and to then be accountable for where you put your creative energy.
Right.
And so I think that's a lot of what our game here is, because once you're in the spirit, there is no time, there is no that that doesn't exist there. It's sort of an eternal
Are
space.
you somebody who struggles to get things done? Today I sit with David Allen, the author of worldwide bestseller Getting Things Done. It's a book, his personal meditative journal on a proven method to get things done in your life no matter what. If you're a creative person who wishes to bring the most out of life on this beautiful journey on this planet, this episode might help you change the way you think on how to get things done so you can dance on this journey of life. Without further ado, David Allen on Seekers Mind Talks. Remember, life is a celebration of consciousness. How do you see life at this point? I think I'm in the mood for some philosophical talks and on getting things done.
Yeah, well, life is good. Life is kind of what you make of it.
Really? Like at what point in your life did you get into this track of, you know, I need to get things done with my life?
Well, I guess I've always sort of thought that. Um, I didn't really have a big plan that I would wind up being this kind of a trainer and coach and writer about this particular area. Uh, my family had a lot of teachers, so I figured I was probably going to be a teacher of some sort. I was a history major in college, so I figured about the only job you have is when you major in history is teaching history. So that's sort of what I thought I was going to do. So I got into graduate school and studying American intellectual history, history of thought, history of culture, etc. And so I thought that's what I was going to do. But it turned out, I was in graduate school in Berkeley in 1968. So that was, kind of an interesting time to be in Berkeley and,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of interest in enlightenment and, all that kind of stuff. So I frankly got more interested in getting my own enlightenment than just studying other people who had theirs. So I dropped out of graduate school. I figured that wasn't where I was going to find it. And then did all kinds of exploration, meditations, martial arts, spiritual practices, all kinds of things to sort of discover who I was, God, truth, and the universe, and all that good stuff. But they weren't paying people to do that, so I had to find a way to make some money. And so I had some friends that kind of knew what they were doing, and they'd started some of their own small businesses. So I wound up being a good number two guy. So I helped a lot of them. I would show up and say, "Hey, can you use some help?" And they said, "Oh yeah, can you take a look at how we're doing work and whether there's an easier way to do it?" So I wasn't that aware of the content of what their business was, but I just looked at their systems because I'm Mister Lazy Guy. I'm probably the laziest guy you ever met. So I just show up and say, "Well, how much easier can we make this? What they're doing? How much earlier can we leave today?" You know, and now they call that process improvement, but I was just trying to figure out, okay, how can we make this easier, what they're doing? So, uh, so I would then fix their system or at least improve it, and then I get bored. So I would then leave and go find another job to do this sort of the same thing for somebody else. Then I discovered they pay people to do that. They call them something, consultant. Oh my goodness, who'd have thought? And so I said, okay, well, and my life was getting more complex. I had learned through my martial arts practices and some of my meditation practices that it was really useful to have a clear head. And, it's very practical to have not be distracted,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to be present. Now, the mindfulness people these days, have that as their focus. How can you just be present, focus on your breathing, et cetera? Well, I learned that 45 years ago, getting a black belt in karate. Uh, so um, that, but my life was getting more complex. my little consulting business was starting to be more successful and busier. And so I found that it was kind of screwing up my head in terms of, eliminating my clarity. And so I thought, so just for myself personally, I started exploring various different techniques about how I could stay more on top of my game. So I didn't wake up one morning with this whole getting things done methodology. It was like little piece by piece by piece by piece. And so I just add that in and well, that worked. And I'd do add that in, that worked. And then I turn around to my consulting clients and share it with them. And if they started to implement it, it produced the same results for them it did for me. More clarity, more focus, more control, more room in your head to focus on meaningful stuff. So that became a lot of the core of what my consulting was. We didn't call it coaching back then, but that's really a lot of what it was. I was working with entrepreneurs and guys who were the CEOs of their small businesses. And then some guy in the corporate world, in the corporate training world, saw what I was doing. They said, "David, wow, we need that result in our whole culture. Can you design some sort of a training program around what you've come up with?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I'll see." So I designed a pilot program, uh, a 2-day personal productivity seminar. I designed that, and we did a pilot program for 1,000 executives and managers over a year's period of time with it. And it turned out to be probably their most successful training that they ever implemented in terms of popularity and people wanting all their staff to then take the training and all that good stuff. And that was Lockheed in 1983 and 84. So I found myself thrust into the corporate training world. Could have fooled me, you know. If you'd told me that's what I was gonna be doing, when I was a history major in Berkeley, I would have said, "Come on, what are you smoking? Gee, no, I don't think so." But it turned out they were the ripest audience for what I'd come up with. They were starting to get hit with the tsunami of email and corporate change and flattened organizations and all that stuff that was really increasing a lot of the stress that they were under. And so that it became popular, and so I spent the next few years training thousands and thousands of people, mostly in the US corporate world, uh, and doing training, and then a lot of what my consulting turned into was, again, we didn't call it coaching, but I was asked by a lot of senior people to come in and sit down with them in their office, at their desk, and have them actually implement what I was teaching.
Mm.
And so I spent literally thousands of hours one-on-one with some of the best and brightest folks you'd ever meet, walking them through the process that I had come up with. And that, over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, I wound up refining all of that. And, it took me, I don't know how many years it took me to realize what I'd come up with, that it was unique and nobody else seemed to have done it, and that it was bulletproof. You couldn't anybody implemented any version of what I had come up with and what I was training automatically had the same kind of results, more clarity, more focus, more control, etc. I was using it for myself first. I just found out that was the easiest way to get stuff done, but be stress free, in doing it.
Yeah,
So,
I think I've heard somewhere, like, I think it was Bill Gates who said, I'd always hire the laziest person because he would find the easiest way to do it, right?
well, that was me, really. So yeah, so that's a short version of a very long story.
Right.
But at some point, somebody said, "David, you ought to write the book." I said, "Write a book? I guess maybe that'd be a good idea." And by that point, it took me that long, probably 15 years to figure out what I'd figured out and that it was
Mhm.
unique.
Mm.
Or I guess I had no formal traditional education in time management, business, or psychology. All mine was just experiential. What I came up with myself. Maybe that's why it was unique because I didn't have any preconditioning about what any of that really should be.
Right.
So,
Like, how much do you think your meditation, you said you went on a spiritual journey right before that, your meditation work, finding things about the universe and having that clarity in your head, as you mentioned, like, how did that affect all of this journey? Was there a part, or what do you think?
well, I've been doing sort of spiritual inner work for 55 years. So,
Wow.
that just became part of my lifestyle. I didn't really go I wasn't out preaching, trying to
Right.
convert people. I just had it for myself and, uh, found that was useful, and it was, a rich exploration of my inner world. So, that just became something that, one meditation I could do waiting for a tram, you know? So, it was like learning to be sort of present at any time and place and be able to sort of access my inner life and, my inner truths.
Right. Is there a technique for mental clarity that you use?
Well, focus on your breathing really helps, and just, implementing my own stuff. Look,
Uh-huh.
I turned 80 years old this year, so I still have to, capture stuff, get it out of my head. I still have to decide what I'm gonna do about it. Still have to keep some sort of an external system that I can trust has all of my commitments and agreements and that I regularly review. So I don't get away with not doing the stuff that I teach. I have to do it.
Uh-huh.
So that's how I get the clarity. See, it's not about working harder. It's really about noticing what has your attention and why does something have your attention, and then saying, "That's really what I need to get out of my head." See, I discovered years ago that your head is a really crappy office, and most people are keeping a whole lot of their life and their work in their head. They're trying to remember, remind, prioritize, manage relationships with, you know, uh, dozens, if not hundreds of things, and that's what's creating a lot of the stress out there. And I just discovered years ago I really like having none of that stuff on my mind, but it's not free. I still have to do what I have to do to get the stuff off my mind. I have to write it down. I have to get it out of my head. I have to clarify what exactly I'm going to do about it, if anything. And then what's the nature of that thing and where do those things go, externally in my world. So I don't have to keep trying to remember or remind myself about them. And so I discovered that years ago. Uh, and then in the last decade or so, the cognitive science researchers have now proven what I came up with, which is your mind is for having ideas, but not for hanging into them.
Mhm.
Roy Baumeister is in the U.S. probably the best known, one of the most experienced cognitive researchers. Uh, is the one that came up with. He said, "Look, as soon as you have more than four things on your mind, you're not going to take a test as well. You're not going to be as present with your kids. You're not going to cook spaghetti as well." That's just scientific data now. So, but I learned that years ago,
So we
so I
just
still have
feed
to
all
do it.
this, yeah. So we just feed all these to our mind, and then that leads to losing clarity, right? Um, like, can you walk us through like an example, okay, everyday relatable example of how these things that we automatically or unconsciously put into our mind that results in this sort of defocused state, especially now with the modern age with so many distractions that, oh my god, we can't even think of. It might have probably become even more difficult to focus and to get things done, actually, right?
So, what has your attention right now? Give me something specific.
My attention is solely focused on you, trying to understand where you are coming from. To be like, to just connect. I also do a little bit of meditation myself, so my attention right now is to understand, because every person has a rich history of experience that you come from. You have 80 years of experience. I'm only like starting my life, so my thinking is there's lots that you have seen in this world and I can learn. So my sole attention is single pointedly focused in what you're saying, what you mean by what you're saying, or your emotions that come up with that. So that is the as a meditation practitioner also, um, what I'm trying to do at least is to focus solely on what you're saying, what your experience is, what can I learn from you. That would be my most important objective. That way I can help my audience too in the
Do
in,
you have something that looks? Do you have something that looks like a to-do list?
to do. Oh, To-do list. So I usually use Notion these days. That's a good tool that I found. So what I do on Notion is like make a list of things that I have to get done. Like um after some point working with my podcast, I sort of got this mental model of prioritizing or dividing stuff into like input activities and output activities. Input activities is what feed my mind, so this is in a way input activity for me. I'm learning from your experience. I can enrich the world in that sense too. Output activity is what goes out to the world or what the world sees. Whatever that happens in my mind, the world doesn't see that. Even if I have a million thoughts in my mind, the world doesn't see that. But what goes out, a good episode or rich experience from a professional such as yourself who has gone through lot many stuff. So all those I categorize as my output activities. So this might be what the modern world demands, such a real. I'm just taking this podcast as an example. So this might be a reel, a short video, or a reflection that I make from that video, all those stuff, good stuff. So I tend to organize myself as input activities. So again, this might be like reading a book also, which feeds my mind, and output activities. So output activities, I have that on a weekly basis, and I go with a check mark on making sure that output activities gets done, because getting things done is hard. It's one thing to say that. You probably have more to comment on that. Like every day we will have that struggle. There's this interesting talk from this guy, Tim Urban. He goes about procrastination. That's one of the hardest hurdles of getting things done, if I'm not wrong. But we always tend to keep things to the last moment. Maybe it's a cognitive bias of the brain to like stop getting you from not doing the hard work, but it's there in all of us. So, coming back to your point, mainly what I do is I have a list of input activities and output activities. I try to balance that and make sure that I reflect on and get those output activities done.
Yay. Well, good for you. Would you say an example? Uh, I don't have anything on my mind right now, so because, I do this stuff, but an example would be a trip that, I'm going to take. So I have to give a keynote speech in Doha in, 3 or 4 2 or 3 weeks. And so, as soon as I have that commitment, then I have that on a project list. And that's and then I say, "Okay, so what's next about that?" Many times what's next is I'm waiting for a contractor, I'm waiting on something else, and I can't there's nothing to do until I receive whatever it is that I'm waiting for. So I have a list called waiting for, of any of those things that, I'm still on hold, that have, a lot of my work on hold until somebody else finishes something or gets something back to me. Um, and then, uh So I keep track of not only my outcomes that I'm committed to, but also the action steps I need to take toward them. Very few people actually decide what the very next action is on their stuff. They say set meeting, but how are you going to set the meeting? Is that an email to send? Is that a phone call to make? Is that an internal chat that you need to do? How do you set the meeting? Oh, yeah, good question. So they haven't finished their thinking about it until you get down to the next physical, visible thing. That's why I was asking you if you have a to-do list, because most to-do lists I see have things on the list like mom or bank or doctor. Well, yeah, there are banks and you had a mom, so good historical data and geographical data. But what are you going to do about those? Oh, I don't know. Mom's birthday's coming, but what are you going to do about mom's birthday? Oh God, I don't know yet. Great. How would you find out what you're going to do? You know, I should call my sister and see what she thinks we ought to do for mom's birthday. Ah, great. Now you have a real action step to take toward that outcome. If you like to watch soccer or football, a soccer player is going to have two primary things on his or her mind when they're on the field. Where's the goal and what's the next play? They certainly may have a strategy about how to get to that goal, but that next play is going to determine the next play is going to determine the next play.
Hmm.
So most people have not determined both the goals that they want to achieve, even the short terms and smaller things like mom's birthday, or research whether I want to open a bank account for my kids or, things like that, or just improve a relationship. Uh, those are outcomes. And so, I mean, the essence of productivity is outcome and action. What are you trying to accomplish, and how do you allocate or reallocate your resources to move the needle toward the finish of that? So again, if you're in your to-do list and your outputs, you have got down to the physical, visible actions about your stuff.
Right,
Bravo!
right.
I doubt that you had totally. That's why I
Um,
was asking what's
yeah.
on it,
I,
right?
I, not to the full extent, but I do have like, okay, I have to post 2 or 3 short videos and then to make this and then prepare for my next episode. I have some actionable items to the point where it's like defined to a physical activity, but some uh, it's weak. I'd have to be honest with you on that. So I would say like 50-50, but I get where you're coming from. That's an
Yeah,
interesting point because that takes the burden of your mind. I think this would empty out your mind as well, right? Because otherwise, if you are just being
well,
vague about your actions, uh, it's still running in your subconscious, so as to say.
right. Well, it also creates not so much a sense of overwhelm, because if you were truly overwhelmed, you'd handle it. You'd do whatever you needed to do to try to get out of that feeling. But for most people, it's not so much overwhelm as it is ambient anxiety. This vague sense that something that you probably ought to do, but you haven't quite decided yet what that is you need to do. And then you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go, oh my God, here's what I really ought to do, whatever. And that's the stuff that you want to get rid of because that's the stuff that again clogs up your thinking. And you see your mind doesn't have one. If your brain had a brain, it would only remind you of these things when you could do something about them.
I read that in your book. Yes.
Right. Well, you know, your mind does brilliant stuff. It's doing it right now, which is you're using long-term history and pattern recognition to say, oh, that's a person, that's a computer, that's a thing, instead of just vibrations of light and sound. So you learn evolving, you learn to make sense out of your world in the present time. Oh, that's a tiger over there. I need to make a fire. There's a thunderstorm coming, whatever. But about 4 things is about all that your brain can handle. As soon as you give it any more than that, then it goes back to, I don't know that it was the subconscious, but it goes unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but that unconscious is still spinning, and the mind doesn't have a mind to let you know what those things are at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll be buying bread at the store thinking something you need to bring up at the next podcast. And while you're doing a podcast, you're remembering you need bread.
There's so very little control there, and you almost when you go into that unconscious state, you're just what I observed is you become nothing but patterns, like your stored patterns. There is no conscious agent. As in, I'm not taking decisions at that point. I'm just running some sort of script.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that because they've estimated you and I have about 50,000 thoughts a day. So I'm not writing down 50,000 things, but
Right.
I am writing down anything that pops into my mind that I can't finish in that moment that I might still need to make a decision about, at
Mm-hmm.
some point. And that's what I need to write down. So, the first thing, if you read my book, the first thing to do is a data dump. Get everything off your mind that's on your mind. And most people don't realize how much stuff is banging around in there. It takes most people 1 to 6 hours just to get that out. Not to organize it, not to prioritize it, just to write it down somewhere, capture it.
Wow.
Then absolutely step one. If you haven't done that, then some part of you knows there's stuff that you haven't captured, and then you don't trust your system and you don't trust your own head, really, because neither one is complete.
Do you trust your head?
But no, don't I? There's nothing on my mind.
Uh huh. To trust.
Yeah.
Right. And when that gets done, you actually have something visible or physical to act on. or then to organize, right?
Yeah, if well, you have to decide. So you're getting emails right now while you're talking, right? And some of those, there's no action needed to take, and some of those just need to delete. There's no action called this trash or delete. Some of those things, there's no action to take on it right now because it's just something you need to keep. It's reference material. So I have over 350 files uh, in my navigator bar in Outlook that has just a person or a topic or whatever, where I'm just keeping email or I'm keeping digital information about in case I need to refer to it. And then the third thing has no action on it would be things there's nothing to do right now, but there might be in 2 months when the symphony is going to be playing what I really want to hear, but it's too early to buy tickets and make a plan for that yet. So
Right.
that's a on hold, incubate, right? Parking lot. So those are the three things that have no action on them. And there's a lot of things in those categories. A lot of things you need to delete, a lot of things you need to just go store somewhere you know where can find it if you need it. And some things need to be put into some sort of a tickler system or a reminder system for later on, either on your calendar or in a tickler file or something like that. That reminds you 3 weeks ahead of the symphony. Hey, dude, you want to go to the symphony? Yeah, time for a ticket? Question mark. So those are those things. But then there's a lot of stuff that there isn't action on, but you can't take that action right now. Not you can. If you read my book, that the 2 minute rule is magic.
Mm.
Anything you
Yeah.
can actually complete in 2 minutes where you are, you should just do right then, because it would take you longer to organize it and look at it again than would it be to finish it when it's in your face.
Right.
So, two
But
2 minute
but
rule?
the brain
Yeah.
doesn't want to do that, right? Like your brain, as I was also hinting earlier about procrastination, that's one of the largest hurdles I think any person will face. Like I can write all these things down. I can empty my brain. I can get clarity. But when I still look at that list, okay, I have to do this thing that's out of my comfort zone, or it requires some conscious effort. Um, what is your mental process at that point? Okay, I know there'll be we're all human. There will be resistance in your mind.
Well, I just learned years ago that if I can finish it in 2 minutes, it keeps my head a lot clearer, and it
Mm-hmm.
keeps my desk and my email and everything else a lot clearer, which makes it easier to work, easier to function.
Right.
And, when you have a clear head, you can do one of two things. You can do the tough thing that you're avoiding so that you can then snack on email as a reward the rest of the day, or you can do the thing that's most fun. And, because that will get your energy flowing and get you up and moving. And I do both. Sometimes I just do what's the most fun thing to do. And sometimes I just do, that's an ugly thing that I need to spend some time, on a spreadsheet or doing some financial stuff to figure that out or to try to respond to this email that, somebody sent me and I'm not sure quite how to do that. So those are that's, and you don't get rid of that. You're always going to have to make those kinds of decisions.
Right. No, I was reading this book about procrastination, and it had something interesting. So it had this idea of emotional surfing. So what actually hinders the process of getting things done for some people is, when you said, as you said, you have that feeling of getting that spreadsheet done. There is an emotion usually associated with it that usually blocks a lot many people. You also said that, like, having that clarity, having doing that data dump reduces the resistance. Is there any other anecdote that you use mentally or physically?
Well, deciding the very next action, those are usually not that hard to do. Uh, the reason you're right, the reason people procrastinate for the most part is their fear of not being perfect. The fear of doing something and it's not going to be perfect right away. So the
Mm.
fear of losing control or being out of control is the greatest human fear. People are killing each other and themselves just you know no just to try to either maintain or achieve some sense of control. Uh, and you know the sense of loss of control could come across in physically, emotionally, or mentally. Most common is the mental one. Gee, I need to know how to do this spreadsheet perfectly because I don't want to start and screw it up. That's why word processing was really a fabulous tool. It really increased productivity a lot because a really good word processor functions like your brain does, like to have ideas, then later on figure out what to do with them. But, when I was going to college, we had typewriters. You had that click, 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 click. And before you write, it better be right because it was such a bitch to try to correct anything, a wrong word that you wrote. So you really had to, have it all together before you even started. And so that's why people waited to the last minute so that they have to make decisions about what to do. And by the way, waiting to the last minute is not I wrote an essay about that. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm.
Sometimes that is the best thing to do, as long as you're not doing that to avoid your life, you're doing it because you need to wait. The timing is not right on that. A lot of business decisions, you want to wait to the very last minute because things are gonna change up until that point. You don't wanna make a decision on incomplete data.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why, that could work. Also, it gets your brain cranking. For any writer, there's nothing like a deadline to get you moving. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you make a commitment to an editor or to a publisher or whatever that the manuscript's got to be there by a certain day. I guarantee you, that's going to be an impetus that's going to get you to get past the fear of not doing it perfectly. And you'll also be afraid physically about stuff. Clean your garage. Oh God, there's stuff in there. They're dead things. They're living things. There's stuff. I got to make decisions about all kinds of things I stuck in there. Oh God. Ugh. And of course, the thing people will avoid probably more than anything else is telling somebody you care a lot about something you have to tell them, but you're afraid of how you're going to feel about how they're going to feel when you tell them what you got to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
You'll avoid that longer than anything.
When you're doing your sessions on teaching people or coaching people, what are some of the hurdles that or the feedback that you've got? Like these are the things that I'm facing when I'm on this journey.
It's all the same. I'm so lazy, it's great. I actually created a career where I don't have to change anything I say, no matter who I talk to.
Uh huh.
No, it doesn't matter because we work with CEOs, we work with 8-year-old kids. It's all about the same thing.
So
So,
so yeah. So
know what
when you're doing yeah.
I I don't deal I don't in a way, I don't really care how much of my book you implement. So I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not a habit change expert. I'm not. My job, in a way, I don't give a shit. Like, my job with I created the game. Whether you wanna play that game is up to you, and how much you wanna play it, how consistently you wanna play it's up to you, but I defined the game, and nobody would deny that who's actually started to implement it. A lot of people think either read the book or hear about it and say, "Oh, that's too much work. I don't need to do that." And I go, "Fine. I don't care." But enough people that do, you know? So,
That's something I had in mind and that I had to ask you too. Like, what's that difference between a life when you like get things done and where you're just floating wherever the universe takes you?
find out.
Do you have a preference for either, or is it like
No, find out. Try to be as zen as you wanna be and don't worry about anything. Let things show up as they show up. Don't as
interesting?
I
Yeah,
go, "Fine, do that." But at some point, see, if you only do what you feel like doing, what you're gonna feel like doing is gonna change. So, that's how I decide what to do. I do what I feel like doing. And I
interesting.
have the freedom to do that because there's nothing on my mind. So I get to be, my style is to be spontaneous and follow my intuitive hunches. That's how I came up with GTD. That's how I came up with this methodology. It allows me to do that. See,
There.
at some
Yeah,
point, if you don't take care of the business of your life, it will dump on your head, and you're not going to be able to be very zen about it at that point,
but
unless you can be.
but you have to go through it to actually understand that.
I think so. I think you have to, you'll live and learn, come on. You're not gonna stop doing that.
There was an
I
interesting
would
study.
I would have burned out a long time ago if I expected people to go implement everything I came up with,
Right.
because nobody does, or very few people do.
Mm-hmm.
I've been meeting some people now who've really, really done it, and they're really flying, and, often they've changed their career, often they've done all kinds of very cool things because they found it transformational. And usually most people the strange thing about it is the people most attracted to what I came up with are the people who need it the least.
Oh,
They're already organized, they're already focused, they're already aspirational. They already know the value of the system because it got them where they are. They already know they can create value because that got them where they are. The problem is they've run out of room. You're up to here. You got no more space. So they started to realize, wait a minute, if I got start to implement this stuff, it opens up more space for me to do it. You don't need time, you need room in your head.
why, why are some people like intrinsically motivated? They don't need any external push. It's just in them. You see these. You've probably seen a lot of these kind of people.
Sure. Well, they have an internal push about something.
Right.
It may be, the sport they want to play. It could be the book they want to write. It could be uh, the, the job they want to make for themselves. It could be the company they want to run. It could be the company they want to sell, and those things just matter to people a lot, enough to push them that way. The problem is that they're usually not as motivated to maintain a marriage or to maintain quality time with their kids or maintain, their own health and not burn out.
It's what gives them deeper meaning, I guess, in some sense.
Sure.
Have
Well,
you
a lot of times my answer, people go, David, how do I do it? I say, relax. The solution is already in play. What's that? Get older.
It's an interesting. Have you observed like really intentional people?
Yeah, all the time.
Is there anything different about them?
Mm, not really. I mean, yeah, in a way. I mean, they they they're clear about what they want to do and what they want to have and what they want to get to. So they're very focused on outcomes that they want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but everybody's focused on outcomes. You can't stop focusing. It's just the nature. I mean, we're teleological beings. So you can't stop not wanting to do something, even if it's just go to the bathroom. You're still going to be moving towards something. Uh, what you're moving toward uh, may need to be more inspirational to you. There's a book, by the way, that's just brand new out in English that I highly recommend about this. If you haven't read it yet, it's called Moral Ambition by a Dutchman named Rutger Bregman.
Mm-hmm.
And he's written 2 or 3 books that I absolutely love. He's one of the most brilliant people that I've come across uh, as a historian, and he's written a lot of stuff about it. And Moral Ambition is really about, it says, uh, a lot of people that he's seen and the studies that he's studied have found that uh, professional people, successful, in some sense, professional people, that 25% of them feel like their job is not creating any value on the planet. And
Interesting.
they're in their 30s or 40s or whatever, and they go, they're just not, they lost whatever motivation they have. It's like, my stuff is worthless. And he said, these are not like your plumbers and electricians and people like that. These are people who have degrees from Harvard and Yale and that went into financial consulting and went into investment banking. It's those kind of folks. He said, but that at some point, they just hit the skids. I was like, this is not making any difference in the world, what they're doing. They're just moving money around or doing whatever else they're doing, but they're not feeling like they are improving the planet at all. So he's now on a mission with the book, and he's created a whole academy of
Right.
people that are attracting people in that state. And that's they're finding people that are getting motivated because they're turning that energy that they have, that intelligence and that ambition into something worthwhile. And that can be highly motivating.
Midlife existential crisis.
Yeah, it could be.
Have you had any of those?
Not really, well, kind of little micro versions of that all the time. Like, what do I do now? Is this the right thing to be doing? And do I really want to write another book? Or, you know, and those are just oftentimes just internal questions that I ask myself in terms of what to do. But no, and I pretty much, once I figured this stuff out and it started to become successful, once I wrote the book, I said, I'm done. I got the game figured out and I put it in a manual. And so in case I got run over by a bus, somebody could pick up the book and then, and do it. And it took me a while to realize that people could actually get value out of the book without me personally, coaching them or holding their hand. Uh, so that was an aha to me. And wow, I published Getting Things Done when I was 55. So I say, people relax. You got plenty of time. And you could have fooled me that that was what I was gonna do, and then it's now sold 3,000,000 copies plus in 30 languages and spread around the world. So, who knew? That was not a big strategy that I had. I think it was Richard Branson who said something like, "There is no luck. There's only high preparation and taking advantage of opportunities as they show up." And I tend to agree with that. So that's pretty much how I've lived my life. I didn't have a big strategic plan that I was so ambitious to go do. I'm not really an entrepreneur. I'm more of a researcher and an educator than
Right.
than a bus than business, whatever. But
Y-
turned out what it just turned out well.
you know what I
Took
love
it I
about
took
you?
it I
Yeah.
I took advantage of the opportunities. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Right. What talking to you in for the past 30 minutes or so, you seem like a really zen guy who like I don't care. I don't care. It's just life. Is that your viewpoint? Is that how you go through things?
Pretty much. And that, by the time you get to your late 60s, 70s, and, I'll be 80 in 2 months. At that point, you know, some things just aren't worth it. Just not worth trouble, not worth worrying. You know,
Is that something that younger generation can learn too?
I think so. I think so. I think a lot of the newer generations, for different reasons, that didn't have to put up with a lot of things that we did, early on, uh, have more of a sense of purpose. They want their life to be more purposeful and meaningful. So a lot of them are, doing good work in that regard and, you know, participating in causes that they believe in and so forth. So that's cool. So I think that's probably happened, but I'm not really an expert in the generational behaviors. There are other people who studied that and written about it.
Uh, any new things that you're focusing on or learning at this point?
Uh, n- Not really. I mean, I learn something every time I do any kind of a coaching or any kind of a keynote speech. I usually learn something, and uh, I often learn by writing. I'm not sure
Mm.
everybody does that, but oftentimes I'm writing for a Substack right now, and in that kind of essay format, uh, it gets me thinking about some things in some more subtle ways that I had thought about them before. But I wouldn't say that's any particular change in direction. It's just another opportunity that showed up. So, I'm still, and my wife too, she's been a partner with me in the business for decades. And we still are supporting, a lot of our certified licensed partners around the world that have been certified to train and coach, GTD. And so it's spreading around the world as I said, when I finished writing the book, I thought I was done. And then I said, now what? Because I was still healthy and active and, God didn't take me at that point. So I said, okay, now what? And then sort of discovered that, um, when somebody read the book and they wrote me in back and said, "Gee, David, I picked up your book," and it had just been published. They picked it up at Barnes and Noble or something in Philadelphia, and they said, "I read it on the weekend. I implemented it, changed my life." I went, "Oh my god, I guess we could scale this." So just the even thought that you could scale this methodology or this
Mhm.
education was a kind of an aha. And that said, okay. And by that time, we had a small staff, and I asked them, I said, "What do you guys want to do? Should we try to scale what you come up with?" They said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, let's do that." I said, "Okay." So that kind of hasn't stopped, and so and our mission was really to spread GPD to as many people on the planet that want it, or that might use it. So, a lot of work to do.
What would you have done if you know being an author is not your thing, was not your thing? Like if you had not written the book, what do you think you've done with life?
I'd go be a waiter in a really good French restaurant.
Wow.
I love being a waiter. I think being a waiter is one of the coolest things you could do, especially if you're a really good waiter. We used to say in our company that before anybody should join the company, they should be a waiter because that'll teach you how to be of service. It'll teach you how to be confident. It'll teach you all kinds of stuff.
Interesting. That's really
So,
interesting. Why French waiter though? Is there
um, just French food is great. French wine is fabulous, and any kind of a good, elegant restaurant would be fine. There,
do it, do you do a lot of wine tasting?
I do.
Why is that a thing? Like I never really understood. Like I'm not a wine guy yet. Might become. What's so interesting about wines?
It's always changing. Even when you put it in the bottle, it keeps changing. It's a very organic thing, and, it's a great culture, uh, and it's quite an art form, and you never know what's gonna come up. You don't never know how good the year is gonna be. You never know, it's a version of farming,
Yeah.
uh, but the output's a little more elegant than just a potato. Uh, not that potatoes nothing wrong with potatoes, I love them, but, well, I don't know. I just got turned on to really good wine. I was waiting in the restaurant. I was a waiter in a restaurant, in a French restaurant, and the owner knew wines really well. And the unfortunate thing is that as a waiter, and you're serving really good wine, a lot of people leave some of that wine in the bottle, in the
Mhm.
bottom of the bottle that they didn't use. So as we were waiters, we got to taste really, really good wine. And that, unfortunately, they sort of raised the bar. So, uh, anyway, I don't know how much of an acquired taste it is. Uh, but yeah, it's just like people enjoy Italian food or they enjoy Chinese food, they enjoy, uh, uh, it's just a taste factor.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Switching gears a little bit, when I was reading your history, at your younger age, you started on your journey to find out like the mysteries of the universe. What is life about? Do you still practice meditation and go on that journey?
yeah, yeah.
What type? Where do you go with it? Like what type of technique do you use, or is it some kind of intellectual understanding that you're trying to pursue? What's your journey on that? On that, what was your whole life journey on that aspect of your life?
Well, learning that there's a lot of things that you can't see, and there are a lot of beings that you can't see that are very much in support of you. So the invisible world out there is a big, big world. It's the, many mansions, as they say in the Bible,
Mhm.
indeed. And so, I have a guardian angel. So being open. See, meditation is everything. It's just like being really, really quiet. Well, yeah, but the universe is always on.
Okay.
All meditation is being able to shut down a lot of the noise so that you can then listen to the more subtle stuff. And so, that's just what I've just had, 50 years of practice doing, just being quiet and listening for the more subtle stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Uh,
one of the reasons that I really like, the methodology I came up with. A lot of people say, "Gee, David, was there a spiritual base to this?" I said, "Well, in a way, I think we are on the planet to uh, and to complete stuff and to then be accountable for where you put your creative energy."
right.
And so, I think that's a lot of what our game here is, because once you're in the spirit, there is no time, there is no that that doesn't exist there. It's sort of an eternal space. Uh, but if you incarnate, if you've embodied, you're here to learn stuff. This is a big classroom here, and so, you know, you can call it karma, you can call it whatever you want, but you're going to you will then pay for, or you will be accountable for the things you have put in motion in this life and maybe many others,
Right.
until they're
I
finished.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned creative energy because, as earlier I was going to describe, there was a science experiment in which people were put in a room and they had no stimulus, no external stimulus. They couldn't do anything, and but they were given a button, so they could either do nothing or push a button and shock themselves. And in that study, it was found that people would rather push that button and give a shock to themselves than sitting simply, which is really interesting, which sort of points to the creative energy that you spoke about. We all have that intrinsic flow, which, if we are not intentional, can flow in lot many directions. But again, coming to your point of being that intentional, creative human being that you are and learning from your observations, that's a really interesting way to use the energy that we have.
Yeah, I think so too.
Interesting. Um, I think that's a really good point to end our little conversation, David, because I think we really, really landed on something really powerful, and I just want to leave it at that.
Okay, cool.
It's so good talking to you. Thank you so much for taking your time. And um, okay, I asked this to my guest, everybody from different fields, just out of curiosity. What is your meaning of life?
To keep expanding myself in as many ways as I can to elevate my consciousness to as high a level as I can.
Interesting. And if you are to recommend two books, not yours, that changed your life to people, what would that be?
Oh, there were so many that had an influence on me. Um, Again, Rutger Bregman is my recent favorite books. A book called Humankind, wonderful book about the positive nature of human beings as opposed to the sensational press that puts out a very different picture many times. And that was a great book. And his new Immoral Ambition, I think, are uh, they both affected me. Uh, quite well. But I've had probably 100 books over the last 50 years that made a big difference. Uh, and when I was in high school, I read all of Suzuki and Alan Watts. That's how it kind of turned me on to the Zen aesthetic of stuff. But I was 18, 19 years old when I did that. And golly, there's a whole raft of books that made a difference.
Well, that was David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done on Seekers Mind Talks. I hope you all benefited from the episode and was able to take at least one more step on getting things done, having better agency in life, and living a life of awareness and intention. If you all enjoyed the episode, please do give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and do check out our other videos as well. And as usual, this is your host Raj signing off from Seekers Mind Talks.